Okay, so being a crown prince isn't all tiaras and waving from balconies. More like tiaras, waving from balconies, and then a mountain of paperwork, endless meetings, and the constant weight of expectation pressing down on you like a lead blanket. My name's George, by the way. Yeah, I know, super original for a royal, right? You'd think they'd get a little creative, maybe go with something dramatic like Aurelius the Magnificent or Zephyr the Bold. But no, just plain old George. Probably because my dad, the king, is a pragmatist. He's all about practicality, which I guess is fair enough when you're running a small country in the 21st century. We're talking about a real kingdom here, not some ceremonial monarchy. We've got a parliament, elections, the whole shebang. It's not all medieval feasts and jousting tournaments, though I kind of wish it was sometimes. That'd be way more interesting than reading through budget reports for the national cheese export. My life? Let's just say it's structured. From the time I could walk, I was groomed to be king. It wasn't just about academics, though there were plenty of tutors drilling history, economics, and political science into my head. I learned about international trade agreements before I learned to ride a bike, which, in retrospect, explains a lot about my social life. It was also about cultivating the image of a future king. Endless etiquette lessons. Apparently, there's a very specific way to hold a teacup that can make or break your diplomatic relations. Who knew? They also taught me how to walk, talk, and basically exist in a way that was deemed appropriate for royalty. It was like being trained for a role I never auditioned for. My interactions with people outside the royal circle were limited. Mostly other nobles, all equally stiff and formal. It was like living in a museum, surrounded by priceless artifacts that you weren't allowed to touch. Dinners were silent affairs. Everyone focused on the intricate dance of silverware and polite conversation that never actually said anything. Balls were a sea of identical faces, all masked with polite smiles and carefully crafted small talk. Even casual gatherings felt staged, everyone hyper-aware of their social standing and the unwritten rules of engagement. It was suffocating. I yearned for genuine connection, for conversations that weren't carefully curated, for people who saw me, not the title I carried. Don't get me wrong, I'm good at it. The politics, the diplomacy, the public speaking, I can do it all with my eyes closed. I can charm foreign dignitaries, negotiate complex trade deals, and give inspiring speeches that make people believe in the glorious future of our tiny nation. I've got the political game down pat. I can play the players, read the room, and manipulate situations like a seasoned chess master. It's all about strategy, knowing what people want, and giving them just enough to keep them happy. It's a dance, a delicate balancing act, and I'm pretty damn good at it, but it's all surface level. It's all about the show. Inside, I'm just George, a guy who likes old movies, enjoys a good book, and secretly dreams of owning a motorcycle. Yeah, I know, totally inappropriate for a future king. But a guy can dream, right? My family? We're complicated. My dad, the king, is a good man, I think. He's dedicated to the country, but he's also distant. Our conversations are mostly about state matters, never personal. He sees me as the future king, not as his son. My mom, the queen, is all grace and elegance, always perfectly composed. She's a master of royal decorum, but I sometimes wonder if she ever lets her guard down. My siblings, well, they're just there. We're not close. We're more like acquaintances who happen to share the same last name. It's all very formal, very proper. There's no real warmth, no genuine connection. It's like we're all playing our assigned roles in some grand, never-ending play. And then there's the marriage. The arranged marriage. Because, of course, that's still a thing. My dad, ever the pragmatist, has decided that I need to marry the Duke's daughter. Apparently, it's a politically advantageous match. The Duke's family is powerful, influential, and their support is crucial for maintaining stability in the kingdom. I get it. I understand the logic, but it still feels wrong. Like I'm being traded like a commodity, a pawn in their political game. It's not about love, it's not about compatibility, it's about power. And I'm so sick of it. I'm sick of being controlled, of having my life dictated by tradition and duty. I'm sick of the gilded cage. I just want something real, something genuine, a connection with someone who sees me, not the crown prince, but just George. So I did something I probably shouldn't have, something reckless, impulsive, and totally out of character. I snuck out, disguised myself, baseball cap, sunglasses, the whole 9 yards, and went exploring. I wanted to see the real city, the city beyond the palace walls, the city my people actually lived in. I wanted to experience life, unfiltered, unscripted, and that's when I met her. Kate. She was different, real, funny, smart, and completely unimpressed by my lack of royal status. We spent a week together, just talking, laughing, exploring the city. She showed me hidden cafes, local markets, the kind of places I'd never even known existed. She treated me like a normal person, and it was amazing. For the first time in my life, I felt free. I fell in love with her, hard, and then I told her the truth, who I really was, and surprisingly, she didn't freak out. She was shocked, sure, but she was also supportive. She accepted me, tiara and all, and that's when I knew. I couldn't go through with the arranged marriage. I couldn't live a lie anymore. I was going to tell my dad. I was going to tell him that I loved Kate, and I was going to marry her, come hell or high water. Telling Kate was nerve-wracking. I mean, here I was, finally feeling like a normal human being, enjoying a real connection with someone, and then bam! I dropped the bomb that I'm a prince. Not exactly your average dating story, right? We were at this little Italian place, tucked away in a quiet corner. The kind of place I never would have found if it weren't for her. I'd just finished telling her some ridiculous story about my job as international cheese consultant. Hey, it sounded plausible at the time. She was laughing, and I knew it was now or never. Kate, I started, suddenly feeling incredibly awkward. There's something I need to tell you. I took a deep breath. It's about my family. I launched into the whole spiel, the crown prince thing, the arranged marriage, the whole shebang. I expected shock, maybe even disbelief. What I didn't expect was her reaction. She was definitely surprised, her eyes widening a bit, but she didn't freak out. She just listened. And then, when I was done, she said, "Wow, that's a lot to take in." She paused, then smiled. "But it doesn't change anything." And just like that, the weight on my chest lifted. She accepted me, tiara and all. It was amazing. Going back to the palace was like walking into a lion's den. I knew my dad wouldn't be happy, but I was determined. I had to do this. I found him in his study, surrounded by maps and stacks of official documents. He looked up as I walked in, his expression stern. "George," he said, his voice formal, "there's a matter we need to discuss." "I know," I replied, meeting his gaze. "The marriage." "Yes," he said, his jaw tightening. "It's essential for the stability of the kingdom." "I'm not going through with it," I said, my voice surprisingly steady. He stared at me, his eyes narrowing. "What did you say?" "I said I'm not marrying the Duke's daughter," I repeated. "I'm in love with someone else." His face turned red. "You dare defy me?" "I'm not defying you, Father," I said. "I'm telling you what I'm going to do." The argument escalated quickly. He was furious, yelling about duty, tradition, the future of the kingdom. I was just as stubborn, talking about my life, my happiness, my right to choose. "If you don't obey me," he roared, "I will disown you. You will be stripped of your title, your inheritance, everything." I looked at him, my heart aching. "Fine," I said, "then disown me," and I walked out. The fallout was immediate and messy, a public spectacle that rocked the foundations of the kingdom. News of my rebellion spread like wildfire, amplified by the insatiable hunger of the media. Headlines screamed about the runaway prince, the royal romance, and the king's fury. The kingdom was in an uproar, a chaotic mix of shock, fascination, and judgment. The public was divided. Some were scandalized by my defiance of tradition, whispering about my disrespect for the crown and my disregard for the stability of the nation. Others, however, were secretly thrilled, seeing me as a symbol of change, a breath of fresh air in the stale, stuffy atmosphere of the palace. They cheered my courage, my willingness to choose love over duty, and whispered about a future where the monarchy might finally connect with the people. The nobles, of course, were mostly outraged, their carefully constructed world of etiquette and tradition shattered by my actions. They saw my decision as a threat to their power, a dangerous precedent that could inspire other commoners to question the established order. The Duke's family, in particular, was furious, their pride wounded by my public rejection of their daughter. They saw the marriage as more than just a political alliance. It was a symbol of their status, their influence, and now their pride had been publicly humiliated. But the real danger, the real threat to my life and the future of the kingdom, came from the rival family, the ones who were always lurking in the shadows, waiting for an opportunity to seize the throne. They saw my disinheritance as their chance, a golden ticket to power. The scandal had weakened my family's position, casting a shadow of doubt over our legitimacy. The public was questioning our authority, the nobles were whispering behind our backs, and the rival family saw their opening. They began to spread rumors, sowing discord and distrust among the people. They whispered about my instability, my lack of commitment to the kingdom, painting me as a reckless, irresponsible young man who cared more about personal desires than the fate of the nation. They used my actions to fuel their own agenda, portraying themselves as the true guardians of tradition, the only ones who could restore order and stability to the kingdom. They were wolves in sheep's clothing, preying on the chaos I had inadvertently created. And they were circling, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. I was walking home one night, replaying the argument with my father in my head, a knot of frustration twisting in my gut. I thought about Kate, her smile, the way she made me feel like an actual person, not just a prince. I wondered if I'd made the right choice, if I'd been too impulsive, too reckless. But then I remembered the look on my father's face, the coldness in his eyes, and I knew I couldn't go back. I rounded a corner, the streetlights casting long, distorted shadows. And suddenly, there they were. Two men, dressed in dark clothes, their faces hidden in the shadows. They moved quickly, silently, like predators stalking their prey. Before I could react, one of them grabbed me, his hand clamped over my mouth, muffling my cry. The other man pulled out a knife, the blade glinting in the dim light. I struggled, trying to break free, but they were too strong. I felt a sharp pain in my side, a searing heat that spread through my body. I gasped for air, but my lungs wouldn't fill. I looked up at the men, their faces still hidden, their eyes cold and empty. I knew who they were, the rival family. They wanted me gone, out of the way so they could seize the throne. I felt a wave of dizziness wash over me, my vision blurring. I thought about Kate, about my father, about the kingdom. I thought about all the things I'd never get to do, the life I'd never get to live. And then, everything went black. Then, everything went white. I was floating, or maybe falling, I don't know. There was no up, no down, no time, just me. I could see flashes of my life, my childhood, the endless lessons, the empty dinners, the fleeting moments of joy with Kate. I thought about my father, his disappointment, his anger. I thought about Sarah, her face when she rejected me. And then I thought about Kate, her smile, her laughter, the way she made me feel, seen, loved. And in that moment, in that strange, in-between place, I understood. I had made mistakes. I'd been so focused on rebelling against my family, against the system, that I hadn't really thought about what I wanted, who I wanted to be. But now, I knew. I knew what was important. Love, connection, a life lived on my own terms. And I knew I wasn't done yet. I had a second chance. Gasping, I sat bolt upright in bed, my heart hammered against my ribs, my breath coming in ragged gasps. The room was familiar. My childhood bedroom in the palace, the same ornate furniture, the same heavy drapes. But something was different. The air felt charged, electric. And then it hit me. I was back, reborn, given a second chance. I wasn't just physically back. It was like my entire being had been reawakened. The naive, idealistic prince was gone, replaced by someone harder, more determined. I remembered everything. The betrayal, the pain, the knife twisting into my side, the cold emptiness of death. And Kate, her face, her smile, the way she made me feel alive. I didn't waste a second. I threw on some clothes, ignoring the royal monogram stitched on the pocket, and raced out of the palace. The guards stared at me, bewildered, but I didn't care. I had a mission. I hailed a cab, the driver's eyes widening in surprise as I rattled off the address of Kate's apartment. I barely registered the bewildered stares, the questions about my disheveled appearance. All that mattered was getting to her. I found her watering the plants on her tiny balcony, her brow furrowed in concentration. "Kate!" I shouted, my voice hoarse with emotion. She turned, her eyes widening in disbelief. "George, but how?" I didn't explain. I didn't need to. I just pulled her into my arms, holding her close, the feel of her against me more real than anything I'd ever experienced. "I'm here," I whispered, burying my face in her hair. "I'm not going anywhere." She clung to me, her body trembling, tears streaming down her face. "I thought I'd lost you," she sobbed. I silenced her with a kiss, pouring all my love, all my regret, all my determination into it. We stood there for a long time, just holding each other, the city noises fading into the background. I was back, and this time, I wasn't going to let anything tear us apart. My father was in his study, as always. He looked up as I entered, his face etched with surprise, and was that a flicker of fear? "George," he said, his voice cautious, "what is the meaning of this? How are you alive?" "Never mind that. They didn't really kill me. We need to talk," I said, my voice firm, brooking no argument. I sat down, meeting his gaze. "I know about the coup." The blood drained from his face. "What?" "I know about the rival family's plans," I repeated. "Their attempts to undermine you, to seize the throne." He stared at me, speechless. "But how?" "It doesn't matter how," I said, my voice hardening. "What matters is that I know, and I can stop it." He tried to bluster, to regain control. "This is absurd. You're just a child. You know nothing of these matters." "I'm not a child anymore," I countered. "And I know more than you think." I leaned forward, my voice low and dangerous. "I know they're planning to use my disappearance to their advantage. They'll paint me as a traitor, a threat to the kingdom. They'll use it to justify their actions." He was silent, his eyes flickering with uncertainty. I pressed my advantage. "I can stop them. I can use my influence, my connections, to expose their lies, to rally support for the crown. But I need your authority. I need to be king." He stared at me, his face a mask of conflicting emotions. Shock, disbelief, anger, and a grudging respect. He knew I was right. He knew the kingdom was in danger, and he knew, deep down, that I was the only one who could save it. He opened his mouth to speak, to argue, to refuse, but I stopped him. "Don't make the same mistake twice, Father," I said, my voice cold and hard. "Don't throw away your kingdom, your family, your legacy, for your pride." He looked at me, his eyes filled with a mixture of emotions I couldn't quite decipher. Then he sighed, his shoulders slumping. "Very well," he said, his voice weary. "You win." Just then, the doors to the study burst open, and several members of the royal guard rushed in, followed by my mother and several other members of the royal family. They were clearly agitated, their faces etched with worry. "Your Majesty!" one of the guards exclaimed. "We heard! "We heard George is alive," my mother gasped, her hand flying to her mouth. "George, but how is this possible? We saw him." Her voice trailed off, the memory of my accident clearly still fresh in her mind. The room was a cacophony of whispers and gasps. Everyone was staring at me, their eyes wide with shock and disbelief. They had all believed me to be dead, a victim of the rival family's treachery. My sudden reappearance was a bombshell, a seismic event that shook the foundations of the palace. My father, seeing the commotion, stood up, his expression a mixture of relief and authority. "Silence," he commanded, his voice ringing through the room. "Yes, it's true. My son, George, is alive." He placed a hand on my shoulder, a gesture of both affection and power. "He has returned to us, and he will lead us through this crisis." The room erupted in cheers and cries of joy. My family, initially stunned and confused, now embraced me with tears in their eyes, relieved and overjoyed to have me back. The news of my survival spread quickly through the palace, and then through the city, creating a wave of excitement and hope. The people, who had been mourning the loss of their crown prince, now rejoiced at his miraculous return. The rival family's plans to exploit my death were instantly derailed. Their carefully constructed narrative of a tragic accident was shattered by the reality of my reappearance. The political landscape had shifted dramatically, and the balance of power had tilted back in favor of the royal family. My rebirth was not just a personal miracle, it was a political coup. The palace was abuzz, the atmosphere electric with a mix of relief, excitement, and a hint of trepidation. My return had thrown the rival family's plans into disarray, but the threat remained. They were cunning, resourceful, and they wouldn't give up easily. I knew I had to act quickly, decisively, to solidify my position and secure the throne. "We need to call an emergency council meeting," I said to my father, my voice firm. "We need to rally the loyalists, expose the conspirators, and nip this coup in the bud." He nodded, his eyes filled with a newfound respect. "I agree, but tread carefully, George. These are dangerous waters." I smiled, a hint of steel in my gaze. "Don't worry, Father, I know how to swim." The council chamber was packed, the air thick with tension. I stood before the assembled nobles, my voice ringing with authority. "My lords and ladies," I began, my gaze sweeping across the room, meeting each of their eyes in turn. "We are facing a grave threat. A conspiracy to usurp the throne, to plunge our kingdom into chaos. A threat that strikes at the very heart of our nation's stability and well-being." I paused, letting my words sink in, allowing the weight of the situation to settle upon their shoulders. For too long, a shadow has been cast over our kingdom, a darkness fueled by ambition and greed. A faction within our midst, driven by their insatiable hunger for power, has been plotting to seize control, to dismantle the very foundations of our society, to sacrifice the welfare of our people for their own selfish gain. I leaned forward, my voice dropping to a low, resonant tone that commanded their attention. "I speak of the rival family, the house of Duke Armand, whose lust for power knows no bounds. They have been weaving a web of deceit and treachery, manipulating events from the shadows, spreading lies and sowing discord among our people. They have sought to undermine the crown, to weaken our alliances, to destabilize our economy, all in pursuit of their own twisted agenda." I gestured to the stack of documents laid out before me, each one a damning piece of evidence against the conspirators. "I have proof," I declared, my voice ringing with conviction. "Intercepted messages, financial records, witness testimonies, all irrefutable evidence of their treacherous schemes. They have plotted to assassinate key figures, even tried to kill me, to incite rebellion, to forge alliances with foreign powers hostile to our kingdom. Their actions are not only a betrayal of our trust, but a direct assault on our sovereignty and our way of life." I lifted my gaze, my eyes burning with righteous anger. "But I will not allow them to succeed. I will not stand idly by while they tear our kingdom apart. I will defend the crown, protect our people, and secure our future. I will expose their lies, dismantle their network, and bring them to justice. I will not rest until every last conspirator is brought to account for their crimes. A murmur rippled through the room, a mix of shock, disbelief, and fear. Some of the nobles exchanged nervous glances, while others shifted uncomfortably in their seats. But I held their gaze, my voice unwavering, my resolve unshakable. I know that some of you may have doubts, may harbor reservations about my words. I continued, my voice regaining its steadiness. But I implore you, look at the evidence, listen to your conscience, and ask yourselves, who truly has the best interests of our kingdom at heart? Who has consistently demonstrated their loyalty, their dedication, their unwavering commitment to the well-being of our people? I paused, letting my words sink in, allowing the weight of the truth to settle upon them. The answer is clear, I said, my voice resonating with confidence. The answer lies in the actions, not just the words, of those who stand before you today. And I, George, your crown prince, pledge my life, my honor, and my unwavering devotion to the defense of our kingdom and the preservation of our way of life. The council meeting was just the first step. I spent the next few days working tirelessly, calling in favors, forging alliances, and rallying support. I met with key figures in the government, the military, and the business world, reminding them of their loyalty to the crown and the dangers of instability. I used my knowledge of the coup to expose the rival families' lies, to discredit their claims, and to paint them as the true threat to the kingdom. I even reached out to some of the nobles who had been wavering, appealing to their sense of duty and patriotism. But it wasn't just about political maneuvering. I knew I needed to win the hearts and minds of the people. I needed to show them that I was more than just a prince, more than just a political figurehead. I needed to show them that I was a leader they could trust, a leader who cared about their well-being. And that's where Kate came in. "Are you sure about this?" she asked, her brow furrowed with concern. "It's risky." I smiled, taking her hand. "I know, but it's necessary. I need to show them who I am, what I stand for." We organized a series of public appearances, visits to hospitals, schools, and community centers. We met with ordinary people, listened to their concerns, and offered our support. Kate was a natural, her warmth and empathy shining through. She connected with people on a personal level, making them feel heard and understood. And I, standing beside her, felt myself changing, growing, becoming the leader I was meant to be. The rival family, seeing their plans unraveling, made a desperate move. They called for a vote of no confidence in the king, hoping to force him to abdicate and create a power vacuum they could exploit. The tension in the palace was palpable, the air thick with uncertainty. But I was ready for them. I'd anticipated their move, and I'd prepared my counterattack. The assembly hall was packed, the atmosphere tense. The rival family's leader, Duke Armand, stood before the assembled nobles, his voice dripping with venom. "The king is weak, indecisive, unfit to rule," he declared. "He has lost the trust of the people, the respect of the nobles. It is time for him to step down." A murmur of agreement rippled through the crowd. I could feel the doubt, the fear, the temptation to side with the seemingly stronger force. But I wouldn't let them win. I stood up, my voice ringing with authority. "Duke Armand," I said, "your accusations are baseless, your motives transparent. You seek to sow discord, to create chaos, to seize power for yourself." I turned to the assembly, my gaze sweeping across the faces of the nobles. "Do not be fooled by his lies. The king is a wise and just ruler, dedicated to the well-being of our kingdom. I stand with him, and I urge you to do the same." My words had an effect. The murmur subsided, replaced by a thoughtful silence. I could see the doubt in their eyes, the questions forming in their minds. I pressed my advantage. "I have proof of Duke Armand's treachery," I declared, producing a series of documents, intercepted messages, financial records, and witness testimonies. He has been plotting this coup for years, undermining the crown and conspiring with foreign powers. The room erupted in gasps and whispers. Duke Armand's face turned pale, his eyes filled with panic. He tried to deny the accusations, but it was too late. The evidence was overwhelming, his credibility shattered. The vote of no confidence was soundly defeated, and Duke Armand, along with his co-conspirators, was arrested. The coup had been thwarted. The victory was sweet, but I knew it was just the beginning. The kingdom was still fragile, the wounds of the attempted coup still fresh. I had a lot of work to do to rebuild trust, to heal the divisions, and to secure our future. But I was confident. I had the support of my family, the loyalty of my people, and the love of my life. And I knew, with a certainty that came from facing death and being reborn, that I could lead our kingdom to a new era of prosperity and peace. The day of the coronation dawned bright and clear, a symbolic new beginning for the kingdom. The cathedral was packed, a sea of faces, nobles in their finery, commoners in their Sunday best, all gathered to witness the ascension of their new king. I stood before the altar, the weight of the crown heavy on my head, the weight of responsibility settling on my shoulders. The air crackled with anticipation, a tangible buzz that vibrated through the packed cathedral. Sunlight streamed through the stained glass windows, casting vibrant hues across the assembled crowd, a kaleidoscope of colors reflecting the diverse tapestry of the kingdom. My heart pounded in my chest, a mixture of excitement and solemnity as I stood before the altar, the weight of the crown pressing down on my brow, a tangible symbol of the immense responsibility that lay ahead. The ornate vestments I wore felt heavy, not just with their physical weight, but with the weight of tradition, the expectations of generations past, the hopes and dreams of a nation resting upon my shoulders. I glanced at my father, the king, his face etched with a mixture of pride and weariness, a silent acknowledgement of the passing of the torch, the transfer of power from one generation to the next. He placed the scepter in my hand, the smooth, polished wood warm against my skin, a tangible connection to the long line of monarchs who had come before me, each one leaving their own mark upon the kingdom's history. His touch was fleeting, but it conveyed a wealth of unspoken words, trust, hope, guidance, and a silent blessing for the journey ahead. I met his gaze, my own eyes filled with a mix of gratitude and determination, a silent promise to uphold the legacy he had entrusted to me, to rule with wisdom, justice, and compassion, to serve the people with unwavering dedication, to lead the kingdom towards a brighter future, a future where prosperity and peace reigned supreme. My father, looking frail but proud, placed the scepter in my hand. "My son," he said, his voice thick with emotion, "may your reign be long and prosperous. May you rule with wisdom, justice, and compassion." I met his gaze, my own eyes filled with a mix of gratitude and determination. "I will, Father," I vowed. "I will not fail you or our people." The ceremony was a blur of ancient rituals and solemn pronouncements. But as the cheers of the crowd echoed through the cathedral, a sense of purpose settled over me. This wasn't just a title, a position. It was a responsibility, a duty to serve, to protect, to lead, and I was ready. The wedding followed shortly after, a joyous celebration that defied tradition and embraced change. Kate, radiant in a simple but elegant gown, stood beside me, her hand clasped in mine. As the Archbishop pronounced us husband and wife, a wave of love and gratitude washed over me. This was my queen, my partner, my confidant. Together, we would face the challenges ahead. Together, we would build a better future for our kingdom. The reception was a grand affair, a mix of formal tradition and joyous celebration. Nobles mingled with commoners, laughter filled the air, and the palace gardens were alive with music and dancing. "You know," Kate said, her eyes sparkling with amusement, I never imagined myself as a queen. I chuckled, pulling her close. Neither did I admitted. But somehow, it feels right, doesn't it? She nodded, her smile radiant. It does. It feels perfect. The early days of my reign were a whirlwind of activity. I met with advisors, reviewed policies, and addressed the concerns of my people. I was determined to make a difference, to use my power to create a more just and equitable society. I implemented reforms, tackling corruption, streamlining bureaucracy, and investing in education and infrastructure. I listened to the voices of my people, their hopes, their fears, their dreams, and I used my knowledge, my experience, and yes, even my telepathic abilities to guide my decisions, to anticipate challenges, and to build a stronger, more resilient kingdom. Your Majesty, my chief advisor, Lord Elmsworth, said one day, his brow furrowed with concern. The merchants are complaining about the new trade tariffs. They say it's hurting their business. I listened patiently, then replied, I understand their concerns, Lord Elmsworth, but these tariffs are necessary to protect our domestic industries and ensure fair competition. We need to find a balance, a way to support our merchants while also safeguarding the interests of our workers and our economy. I spent hours poring over reports, consulting with experts, and meeting with representatives from both sides. It was a delicate balancing act, but I was determined to find a solution that worked for everyone. In the end, I implemented a series of tax breaks and subsidies for small businesses, while maintaining the tariffs on foreign goods. It wasn't a perfect solution, but it was a compromise that satisfied most parties and helped to stabilize the economy. I also worked to strengthen our international alliances, forging new partnerships and reaffirming old ones. I traveled to neighboring kingdoms, meeting with their leaders, negotiating trade agreements, and fostering diplomatic relations. I used my political skills to navigate the complex web of international politics, always mindful of the delicate balance of power and the need to protect our kingdom's interests. Your Majesty, the ambassador from a neighboring kingdom said during a state visit, my king wishes to propose a military alliance. He believes that together, we can deter any aggression from our common enemies. I considered the offer carefully, weighing the potential benefits and risks. I appreciate your king's proposal, Ambassador, I replied. But before we commit to such an alliance, I need to consult with my advisors and assess the potential impact on our kingdom's neutrality. I wasn't afraid to make tough decisions, to stand up for what I believed in, even when it was unpopular. I learned from my past life's mistakes, from the arrogance and isolation that had led to my downfall. I knew that true power wasn't about control, but about service. It wasn't about imposing my will, but about listening to the voices of my people, understanding their needs, and working together to build a better future. And so, I ruled. With wisdom, with compassion, with a determination to create a kingdom where everyone had a chance to thrive. I wasn't perfect. I made mistakes, but I always learned from them. And as the years passed, I saw our kingdom flourish. The economy grew, the people prospered, and our international standing strengthened. I had fulfilled my promise to my father, to my people, and to myself. I had become the king I was meant to be.